Daniel Cole was nobody important. He knew that. Everyone knew that. He was just a maintenance engineer on the diplomatic vessel Starboard Horizon, fixing broken pipes and faulty wiring while important people in fancy clothes walked past him without a second glance. Humans were tolerated in space, but they were never respected. They were the new species, the young ones, the ones who had only discovered space travel a few hundred years ago while the Empire had ruled the stars for. He did not mind. Daniel had never wanted to be important. He wanted to do his job, send money back to his mother on Earth, and maybe one day save enough to buy a small ship of his own. Simple dreams for a simple man. The Starboard Horizon had docked for a diplomatic summit. Daniel had been given strict orders to stay on the ship, to stay out of sight, to not cause any trouble. Humans were guests here, and guests did not wander around the palace grounds. But the ship's water recycling unit had failed, and he needed a specific part that could only be found in the lower market district near the palace. He moved through the crowded streets with his head down, trying not to draw attention. They were tall and elegant, with silver skin and eyes that glowed like pale moons. They moved like dancers, every gesture precise and graceful. Next to them, Daniel felt clumsy and small. His brown hair was messy. His uniform was stained with grease. He was everything they were not. He found the part he needed and was heading back to the ship when the screaming started. It came from the direction of the palace gardens, a place where commoners were forbidden to enter. Daniel knew he should keep walking. This was not his world. These were not his people. Whatever was happening had nothing to do with him. But then he saw them. 3 figures in dark armor were dragging a young female toward a waiting shuttle. She was fighting them, kicking and screaming, but she was small, maybe the equivalent of a human teenager. Her ceremonial robes were torn. Blood ran down her silver face. The guards stood frozen at the edge of the garden. They had their weapons drawn, but they were not moving. Daniel could hear them arguing in rapid, something about protocols and authorization and waiting for command approval. The girl screamed again as one of the attackers struck her across the face. Daniel did not think, he did not plan, he just moved. He ran toward the shuttle with nothing but a maintenance tool in his hand, a heavy wrench meant for tightening bolts on pressure valves. The attackers saw him coming and laughed. One of them raised a weapon and fired. The shot burned across Daniel's shoulder, and the pain was blinding. But he had grown up on the rough streets of Detroit before he had joined the Coalition fleet. Pain was an old friend. He kept running. He hit the first attacker low, driving his shoulder into the alien's midsection and sending them both crashing to the ground. The wrench came down hard on the attacker's helmet again and again until the alien stopped moving. The second attacker released the girl and charged at Daniel. They fought in the dust, trading blows, and Daniel took more hits than he gave. But he was desperate and angry and absolutely unwilling to quit. He caught the attacker's arm and twisted it until something cracked. The alien howled and fell. The third attacker had the girl by the throat, a knife pressed against her silver skin. "Come closer and she dies," the attacker hissed in broken common. Daniel stopped. His chest heaved. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye. He looked at the girl, at her terrified face, at the knife ready to end her life. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, you win." He dropped the wrench and raised his hands. The attacker smiled and loosened his grip on the girl, just for a moment, just enough to reach for a communication device on his belt. Daniel moved. He covered the distance in 3 steps, faster than he had ever moved in his life. His hand closed around the attacker's wrist and forced the knife away from the girl's throat. They struggled, the blade flashing between them, and then Daniel felt a sharp pain in his side. But he did not let go. He twisted the knife around and drove it into the attacker's chest. The alien fell. Daniel caught the girl before she could collapse. She was shaking, crying, speaking in too fast for his translator to follow. He held her carefully, gently, trying not to frighten her more than she already was. "It is okay," he said in his simple comment. "You are safe now. I have got you. You are safe." He carried her toward the guards, who were finally rushing forward now that the danger had passed. The girl had lost consciousness, her head resting against his shoulder. Daniel was barely standing himself. The wound in his side was bad. He could feel the warmth of his own blood soaking through his uniform. The first guard to reach him did not offer thanks. Instead, the guard pointed a weapon at Daniel's face. "Put her down, human," the guard commanded. "Put her down immediately." Daniel blinked in confusion. "She needs medical attention. She is hurt." "You have committed a capital offense." The guard's voice was cold. "You have touched a member of the royal bloodline. You have broken the most sacred law of our empire." Daniel stared at him. "I just saved her life." "You have touched the princess, youngest daughter of Queen." The guard gestured, and more soldiers surrounded Daniel. "For this crime there is only one punishment: death." Daniel looked down at the unconscious girl in his arms, at the princess he had not known was a princess. He looked at the guards who had done nothing while she was being taken. He looked at the weapons pointed at his heart. He should have felt fear, he should have felt regret, but all he felt was tired. "She was going to die," he said quietly. "Someone had to do something." They took the princess from his arms. They put him in chains. And as they dragged him away toward the palace dungeons, Daniel Cole wondered if this was how his simple life was going to end, punished for the crime of saving a child who happened to be born into the wrong family. Above him, the sun began to set, painting the silver towers of the capital in shades of gold and red. It was beautiful, he thought. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He tried to hold onto that beauty as the darkness of the dungeon swallowed him whole. The dungeon was cold and dark. Daniel sat on the stone floor with his back against the wall, his hands bound by energy chains that hummed softly in the silence. A medical drone had visited him once, just long enough to seal his wounds so he would not die before his trial. They wanted him alive. They wanted him to suffer properly. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the princess's terrified face. He saw the knife at her throat. He saw the guards standing frozen while she screamed for help that never came. He did not regret what he had done. He could not regret it, but he wished he had known. He wished someone had told him that in this empire, saving a life could cost you your own. Morning came, though he could not see the sun from his cell. Guards arrived and pulled him to his feet. They marched him through long corridors of polished stone, past tapestries that told the history of the empire, past statues of ancient queens and kings who stared down at him with cold, disapproving eyes. The council chamber was enormous. Sunlight streamed through windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. Hundreds of nobles filled the observation galleries, their silver faces turned toward the center of the room where Daniel now stood. 7 council members sat on elevated platforms arranged in a half-circle. They wore robes of deep purple and gold, and their expressions held nothing but contempt. At the center sat Lord, the chief advisor to the crown. He was old, even by standards, with deep lines carved into his silver face and eyes that burned with cold authority. "Daniel Cole of Earth," Lord began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You stand accused of violating the sacred law of blood. You, a human, touched a member of the royal bloodline without permission, without right, without honor. How do you answer these charges?" Daniel looked up at the council. His throat was dry, his body ached, but he stood straight. "I saved her life," he said simply. "She was being taken by those attackers. Your guards did nothing. I did something." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lord raised a hand for silence. "The actions of our guards are not your concern. They followed proper protocol. Authorization was being sought through the correct channels. You had no right to interfere." Daniel felt something twist in his chest. Authorization. She was a child with a knife at her throat. How long does authorization take when a child is about to die? That is not relevant. Lord leaned forward. The sacred law exists to protect the purity of the royal bloodline. It has stood for 12,000 years. No lesser species may touch a member of the royal family under any circumstances. There are no exceptions. Not even to save a life. Not even then. Daniel was quiet for a moment. He looked around the chamber, at the noble faces watching him like he was an insect pinned under glass. He thought about his mother back on Earth, about the letters he would never send her, about the life he would never live. "Where I come from," he said slowly, "we have a different law. When someone is in trouble, you help. You do not ask for permission. You do not wait for authorization. You just help, because that is what good people do." Lord smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "And where has that philosophy brought your species? You are children playing at civilization. You have been in space for a few hundred years. We have ruled these stars since before your ancestors climbed down from the trees. Do not lecture us on morality, human." A door at the side of the chamber opened, and a woman in a blue coalition uniform entered. Ambassador Morton was tall and sharp-eyed, with gray streaks in her dark hair. She had fought for human rights in the coalition for 30 years, and she was not easily intimidated. "Honored Council," she said, her voice cutting through the tension, "I formally request that this tribunal recognize the extenuating circumstances of Mr. Cole's actions. He acted to protect life. He acted with bravery and honor. Surely these qualities should be considered." Lord did not even look at her. "Ambassador, you have no standing in this matter. The human committed a crime on soil. Law applies. Your coalition treaties do not protect him here. He saved your princess. He defiled our princess." The words were harsh, final. His touch was a violation of everything we hold sacred. The law is clear. The punishment is clear. Ambassador Morton's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "And what is the punishment?" "The burning halls." Lord spoke the words like they were nothing, like they meant nothing. "He will be executed slowly over the course of 3 days, so that he may contemplate his crimes as his life fades. It is the punishment reserved for the worst offenders against our sacred traditions." The crowd murmured in approval. Ambassador Morton went pale. "This is murder," she said. "This is barbaric." "This is justice." Lord stood. "The sentence will be carried out at dawn tomorrow. The human will be taken to the burning halls and executed according to our ancient customs. This tribunal is concluded." Guards moved toward Daniel. Ambassador Morton tried to reach him, but she was held back by more soldiers. "Daniel," she called out, "I will contact Earth. I will contact the Coalition Council. We will find a way." Daniel looked at her, and for the first time since his capture, he smiled. It was a tired smile, a sad smile, but it was real. "Thank you, Ambassador, but I do not think there is time." He paused as the guards took hold of his arms. "Just tell my mother I was trying to do the right thing. That is all I want her to know." They dragged him away. The great doors of the council chamber closed behind him with a sound like thunder. In the observation galleries, the nobles were already returning to their conversations, already forgetting about the human who had dared to break their sacred law. But somewhere in the palace, in a guarded room filled with soft light, Princess was waking up, and she was about to ask a question that would change everything. "Where is the one who saved me?" she whispered. "Where is the human who carried me to safety?" The attendants around her exchanged nervous glances. They did not want to answer, but they would have to. And when they did, the princess would learn the truth about what her empire had done to the man who had risked everything to save her life. Princess remembered the fear. She remembered the hands grabbing her, the pain of being struck, the cold certainty that she was going to die. She remembered screaming for the guards, watching them stand frozen at the edge of the garden while her attackers dragged her away. And then she remembered him. A human, small and strange-looking, with messy brown hair and eyes that held no fear. He had come running toward her attackers like he had no idea he could die, like saving her was the only thing that mattered in the entire universe. She remembered his voice, soft and steady, telling her she was safe. She remembered his arms around her, gentle despite the violence of what had just happened. She remembered feeling, for the first time in her young life, that someone truly cared whether she lived or died. When she woke in her chambers, surrounded by attendants and physicians, the first words out of her mouth were about him. "The human who saved me, where is he? Is he all right?" The attendants looked at each other with expressions she did not understand. Fear, maybe, or shame. "Your Highness," one of them said carefully, "you should rest. You have been through a terrible ordeal." "I will rest after you tell me what happened to him." She pushed herself up despite the pain in her body. "He was wounded. I saw blood on his uniform. Is he being treated? I want to thank him personally." Silence filled the room. The attendants would not meet her eyes. A cold feeling began to spread through the princess's chest. "Tell me," she demanded. "Tell me right now." The oldest attendant, a woman who had served the royal family for decades, finally spoke. "The human has been arrested, Your Highness. He was tried this morning before the High Council. He has been sentenced to death." Felt the world tilt beneath her. Death for what crime? "For touching you, Your Highness. The sacred law of blood forbids any lesser species from making contact with the royal bloodline. The penalty is execution in the burning halls." The princess stared at her in disbelief. "He saved my life. The attackers were going to kill me. He fought them alone while the guards did nothing." "The law does not recognize exceptions, Your Highness." Threw off her blankets and stood. Her legs were weak and pain shot through her body, but she did not care. "Take me to the council chamber, now." "Your Highness, you are in no condition to." "I am the daughter of Queen." Her voice was harder than she had ever heard it. "You will take me to the council chamber, or I will walk there myself and collapse on the steps for everyone to see. Which would you prefer?" They took her. The council was still in session when she arrived, discussing minor matters of trade and territory. The doors opened, and every head turned to watch the princess walk slowly down the center aisle. She was pale and unsteady, but her eyes burned with determination. Lord rose from his seat. "Your Highness, this is most irregular. You should be resting. Your physicians." "My physicians can wait." She stopped at the center of the chamber and looked up at the council. "I am here to speak on behalf of Daniel Cole, the human you have condemned to death." Murmurs swept through the galleries. Lord frowned deeply. "Your Highness, with great respect, this matter has already been decided. The law is clear." "The law is wrong." The words hung in the air like thunder. The murmurs became gasps. No one spoke against the sacred laws. No one, not even a princess. Continued. "I was there. I saw what happened. The guards received warning of the attack. They knew the separatists were coming, and they did nothing. They stood at the edge of the garden and argued about protocol while I was being dragged away to die." "The guards followed proper procedure," Lord said stiffly. "Engaging without authorization could have." "Could have what? Saved my life," the princess's voice cracked. "A stranger, a human you call lesser, came running to help me when my own people would not. He took wounds for me. He killed for me. He held me in his arms and told me I was safe. And for this, you want to burn him alive." Lord's expression did not change. "Your Highness, you were delirious from your ordeal. You cannot properly judge." "I was conscious enough to know that he was the only one who cared whether I lived or died." "The human acted out of selfish ambition," Lord said smoothly. "He hoped to gain favor with the crown, perhaps to advance his own position. His motives were impure." Stared at him. "He did not even know who I was. He thought I was just a girl being attacked. He risked everything for a stranger. How can you call that selfish?" "Your Highness, you are young. You do not understand the importance of our traditions. The sacred law has protected our bloodline for 12,000 years. If we make exceptions, even for seemingly good reasons, the law loses its power. Today we forgive a human who touched a princess. Tomorrow, who knows what violations we will be asked to accept. So you would rather let an innocent man die than admit our law might be flawed. Lord leaned forward. The law is never flawed, Your Highness. It is we who sometimes fail to understand its wisdom. He turned to the other council members. I move that the princess's testimony be struck from record. She was compromised by her ordeal and cannot be considered a reliable witness. The sentence stands. The other council members nodded their agreement, one by one. Felt tears burning in her eyes. You cannot do this. I will not let you do this. You do not have the authority to stop us, Your Highness. Lord's voice was almost gentle now, almost kind. Your mother is far away, commanding the fleet at the edge of our territory. By the time she returns, the execution will be long finished. Go back to your chambers, rest, heal, and try to forget this unfortunate incident. Guards moved to escort the princess out. She did not resist. There was no point. She had no power here. But as she was led away, she made a decision. Her mother might be far away, but the communication network was fast. The Imperial fleet could travel faster than any ship in the galaxy. She would send a message. She would tell her mother everything, and she would pray to every star in the sky that Queen would return in time. In his cell beneath the palace, Daniel Cole did not know that a princess was fighting for his life. He did not know that a message was being sent across the stars. He only knew that dawn was coming, and with it, his death. He thought about his mother. He thought about Earth. He thought about the girl he had saved and hoped that she was healing, that she would live a long and happy life. It was enough, he decided. Whatever happened tomorrow, it was enough. He had done the right thing. That was all that mattered. The night before Daniel's execution, the capital city was quiet. The streets were empty. The nobles had retired to their grand homes. The guards at the palace walked their patrols with slow, lazy steps. Nothing unusual was expected. Nothing unusual ever happened. And then the sky caught fire. It began as a single point of light far above the atmosphere. Then another. Then another. Within moments, the darkness was filled with the burning trails of ships dropping out of hyperspace, so many ships that they blotted out the stars. The entire Imperial fleet had arrived. All 47 warships, every battleship, every cruiser, every destroyer that the Empire possessed. They hung in the sky like a wall of steel and fire, their weapons powered, their shields raised. Alarms screamed throughout the capital. Guards ran to their posts. Council members woke from their sleep and rushed to the communication centers, demanding to know what was happening. Lord stood at the window of his chambers, watching the fleet descend. His silver face had gone pale. She was not supposed to return for another month, he whispered. How is she here? The answer came soon enough. A shuttle broke away from the largest warship and descended toward the palace with escort fighters flanking it on all sides. It landed in the main courtyard, and when the doors opened, Queen stepped out into the torchlight. She was magnificent and terrible. She wore full battle armor, the ancient ceremonial plate that queens had worn to war for thousands of years. Her sword, the blade of the first queen, hung at her side. Her eyes glowed not with the soft light of her people, but with something hotter, something dangerous. She walked toward the council chamber without a word. Guards and servants scattered before her. No one dared to stand in her path. The council members assembled quickly, still adjusting their robes, still trying to understand what was happening. They lined up to greet her, bowing deeply as she entered the chamber. Your Majesty, Lord began, stepping forward with a practiced smile. What a welcome surprise. We did not expect your return so soon. I trust the situation at the border has been. Silence. The single word stopped him cold. Queen stood in the center of the chamber, and the fury in her eyes made even the oldest council members step back. Where is the human? She asked. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. Lord tried to maintain his composure. "Your Majesty, if you are referring to the criminal who violated the sacred law." "I am referring to Daniel Cole, the man who saved my daughter's life." The Queen's voice rose. "Where is he?" "He is in the detention cells, awaiting execution at dawn. The sentence was passed in accordance with." "Bring him here now." Guards ran to obey. Lord watched them go, then turned back to the Queen with a careful expression. "Your Majesty, with the greatest respect, the Council has already ruled on this matter. The sacred law is clear. The human touched a member of the royal bloodline. The penalty." "I know what the penalty is." The Queen began to walk slowly around the chamber, her armor clinking softly with each step. "I also know what my intelligence officers discovered while I was traveling here. Would you like me to share their findings with the Council?" Lord said nothing. His face had become very still. 12 minutes, the Queen said. "That is how long before the attack that your guards received warning of the separatist presence in the palace gardens. 12 minutes, and they did nothing. They did not alert security. They did not move to protect my daughter. They stood at their posts and waited for authorization that never came." She stopped in front of Lord. "Do you know why they waited? Because they were afraid. They were afraid that acting without proper permission might damage their careers. They calculated the risks, decided that my daughter's life was not worth their positions, and they let her be taken." Lord's voice was strained. "Your Majesty, they followed protocol." "Protocol?" The Queen's voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "My daughter was being dragged toward a shuttle with a knife at her throat, and you speak to me of protocol." She turned to address the entire council. "A human saved her. A member of a species you call lesser, you call primitive, you call unworthy. He saw my daughter in danger, and he did not wait for authorization. He did not calculate the risks to his career. He ran toward the danger, took wounds, killed 3 attackers with nothing but a tool from his belt, and carried my child to safety." Her gaze swept across their faces. "And your response was to sentence him to death." Lord tried one more time. "The sacred law has protected our bloodline for 12,000 years, if we make exceptions. Then we show that we understand the difference between the letter of the law and its spirit." The Queen drew her sword. The ancient blade gleamed in the torchlight. "Our ancestors created the sacred law to protect the royal family, to protect us. This human did exactly that. He protected my daughter when our own people failed, and you want to burn him alive for it." The chamber doors opened, and guards led Daniel Cole inside. He was still in chains, still wearing his blood-stained uniform. He looked exhausted and confused, blinking in the bright light of the chamber. Then he saw the Queen, and his eyes widened. Queen walked toward him slowly. The guards stepped aside, not daring to stand between their Queen and the human. She stopped in front of Daniel and looked at him for a long moment. He met her gaze without flinching, though she could see the fear he was trying to hide. "You saved my daughter," she said quietly. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Why, you knew the law. You knew what would happen to you." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I did not know she was a princess, Your Majesty. I just saw a girl in trouble. Where I come from, you help people in trouble. That is all there is to it." The Queen nodded slowly. Then she turned to face the council. "Release him." Lord stepped forward. "Your Majesty, you cannot simply." "I can." The Queen's voice cut through his protest like a blade. "I am invoking the right of royal privilege. This ancient law supersedes all others. It has not been used in 1,000 years, but it has never been repealed." She raised her sword. "By my authority as Queen of the Empire, I declare Daniel Cole innocent of all charges. More than that, I name him a hero of the Empire. He will receive our highest honors, and anyone who questions this decision will answer to me personally." The chamber was silent. Lord opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. There was nothing he could say. The right of royal privilege was absolute, even he could not argue against it. The guards removed Daniel's chains. He rubbed his wrists, still not quite believing what was happening. Queen looked at him with something that might have been a smile. "You have earned more than your freedom, Daniel Cole. Tomorrow, the galaxy will know what you did, and they will know how the Empire rewards true courage." Daniel did not know what to say, so he simply bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Queen turned away, her attention now fixed on Lord and the council members who had sentenced an innocent man to die. The fury had not left her eyes. "Now," she said coldly, "let us discuss what happens to those who failed their princess and tried to execute the man who saved her." Council members went pale, and Daniel Cole realized that his ordeal was over, but theirs was just beginning. The judgment of Queen was swift and absolute. The guards who had failed to protect Princess were stripped of their positions and sent to the outer colonies to serve as common laborers for the rest of their lives. 3 council members who had pushed hardest for Daniel's execution, including Lord himself, were removed from the council in disgrace. Their titles were taken. Their lands were seized. Their names were struck from the records of noble families. But the Queen's harshest punishment was reserved for Lord alone. He had argued most strongly for Daniel's death. He had dismissed the princess's testimony. He had spoken of traditions and sacred laws while plotting to execute an innocent man before the Queen could return. "You knew," the Queen said to him as he stood before her in chains. "You knew that my daughter was in danger because your guards failed. You knew that a human saved her when your people would not, and you tried to hide your shame by killing him before I could learn the truth." Lord said nothing. There was nothing to say. "You will go to the burning halls," the Queen declared. "The punishment you designed for him will now be your own. Let it be known throughout the Empire that they do not sacrifice the innocent to protect the guilty." They dragged him away screaming. Daniel watched him go and felt nothing. He had been prepared to die. He had made peace with it. Now he was alive, and the man who had sentenced him was facing the fate meant for him. Just as he thought. Strange how it works sometimes. The ceremony was held 3 days later in the great plaza at the heart of the capital. The entire city gathered to watch. Millions more watched through broadcasts sent across the galaxy. Every species in the coalition had their eyes on the. Daniel stood on a raised platform, wearing a new uniform that the Queen had given him. It was white and silver, the colors of royalty, with gold trim that marked him as a hero of the Empire. He felt awkward and out of place, but Ambassador Morton had told him to stand straight and try not to fidget. Queen addressed the crowd. Her voice carried across the plaza, amplified by the same technology that was broadcasting her words to the stars. "For 12,000 years, we have believed that worth is carried in blood. We have believed that some species are greater than others, that some people are born to rule while others are born to serve. We have built an empire on these beliefs, and we have never questioned them." She paused, letting her words settle over the crowd. "Today, a human taught us that we were wrong." Murmurs rippled through the gathered. The Queen continued. "Daniel Cole is not royalty. He is not a soldier or a diplomat or anyone of importance. He is a maintenance engineer who fixes broken pipes and faulty wiring. By our standards, he is the least of the least. And yet, when my daughter's life was in danger, he was the only one who acted. He did not wait for permission. He did not calculate the risks. He simply saw a child in trouble and ran to help her." She turned to look at Daniel. "This is what true nobility looks like. Not blood, not birthright, not 12,000 years of tradition. Courage, compassion, the willingness to risk everything for someone you have never met." She gestured and Princess stepped forward. She was still recovering from her ordeal, moving carefully, but her eyes were bright and determined. In her hands she carried a small box. "Daniel Cole," the Queen said, "kneel." He knelt. His heart was pounding. He still was not sure this was really happening. By my authority as Queen of the Empire, I grant you something that has never been given to any outsider in our history. I name you a citizen of the royal household. You will carry the protection of the crown wherever you go. You will be welcomed in any port, any home, any world. You are one of us now." The crowd was silent. This was unprecedented. This was impossible, and yet it was happening. Princess opened the box and removed a pendant on a silver chain. It was the Honor Guard pin, the symbol worn only by those sworn to protect the royal family. She placed it around Daniel's neck with gentle hands. "Thank you," she whispered, so quietly that only he could hear. "Thank you for saving me." Daniel looked up at her. Anyone would have done the same. She shook her head. "No, they would not have. That is why you matter." He rose to his feet. The crowd erupted in applause, not just from the humans in attendance but from themselves. Whatever they had believed before, whatever prejudices they had carried, they could not deny what they had witnessed. A human had shown them what courage looked like. After the ceremony, a reporter from the Coalition News Network approached Daniel. She was human, with eager eyes and a recorder hovering at her shoulder. "Mr. Cole, do you have any words for the humans watching across the galaxy?" Daniel thought for a moment. He was not good with words. He had never been important enough to need them. "Just that we do things a little differently where I come from," he said finally. "When someone is in trouble, you help. You do not ask questions. You do not wait for permission. You just help, and then you figure out the politics later." He paused, looking out at the crowd, at the silver faces of those who had once considered him lesser. "I am not special. Any human would have done what I did. Maybe that is what makes us different. We are taught from childhood that every life matters, that you do not stand by while someone suffers. We are taught that being good is more important than being powerful." He smiled slightly. "I hope that someday everyone in the galaxy will believe the same thing." The broadcast went out across Coalition space. On 1,000 worlds, humans watched the ceremony and felt something swell in their chests. Pride, maybe, or hope, or simply the quiet satisfaction of knowing that their values, their beliefs, their way of life had been proven right on the grandest stage imaginable. Daniel Cole returned to his duties on the starward horizon the following week. He had been offered promotions, positions of power, wealth beyond imagining. He had turned them all down. "I just want to fix things," he told Ambassador Morton. "That is what I am good at." She had smiled and shaken her head. "You fixed more than you know, Daniel. You fixed the way an entire empire sees us." He shrugged. "I just did what anyone would do." But that was the point, she thought as she watched him walk away. That was exactly the point. Any human would have done the same, and now the galaxy was beginning to understand what that meant. In the darkness between the stars, humanity was rising, not through conquest or power or ancient bloodlines, through something simpler, through something better. Through the simple belief that when someone is in trouble, you help. That was the human way. And now, thanks to a maintenance engineer named Daniel Cole, the whole galaxy knew it.